Sam and Cole podcast. We're speaking Sunday night after the Jaguars' 28-23 loss to the Jets. It is a somewhat of a somber evening, I guess you could say, after watching that again, but we've experienced a lot of that. Again, thanks to our friends at Champion Cycling for their continued support. The three locations, Arlington, the Beach, and Mandarin. Stop in and see Phil or Jim or Brian, any of the locations. They'll take care of your cycling needs from beach cruisers to high-end road bikes and all repairs as well. Champion Cycling continued support of the Sam and Cole podcast. Cole, it just was a lot more of the same. I mean, it's just such an odd thing to continue to watch, Groundhog Day kind of play. Bortles, I don't think, has the luxury of saying of being a young player that much longer. And some of the mistakes he made today, although he had a career day in terms of yardage, some of the mistakes he made today were too critical of situations. Holding the ball too long. A quarterback has to have the internal clock, and he seems to have that. But I guess do we give him a pass for making errors of commission because he's trying so hard to make a play?
Here's what it looks like to me, Sam. That overall, this is a team that is better than they were last year, improving more slowly than pretty much everybody would want.
And not that everybody would expect it, but what everybody would want. You're right.
Well, depends on when you ask the question about how fast do you expect them to improve, because when you see, and this is probably not an apples to apples comparison, certainly not an apples to apples comparison. When you see what Andrew Luck did with the Colts in his second year in the league, and this is not all on Bortles, but we'll just start there. Or you watch what Peyton Manning did in his second year in the league. Or you watch what, you start finding these guys who were top 5 picks at quarterback, and it's certainly not that every one of them did well, but the ones who did well by the middle to end of their second year, there was no doubt that he was your guy. And Bortles is kind of right now in that tantalizing spot where he hasn't completely gotten there where you'd say, okay, the way he's playing around Thanksgiving his second year, that's what we expect him to be playing at that high level. And if he takes it to another level, wow, watch out. But you can win a lot with a guy playing at that level. And that's sort of the way with the rest of the team. Telvin Smith sometimes looks like a world beater. Sometimes he's peeking in the backfield and they bust a big play behind him.
Right.
Cyprian, fewer times where he's doing that than maybe with Telvin Smith. But these young players, they just have not come along quickly enough. And again, I go back and point at the coaching approach, because I think you have to put pressure on young players because they don't know how to be pros yet. Veteran players, Derek Marks knows how to be a pro. Paul Leslie knows how to be a pro. These first and second year players don't know how to be pros because they haven't been pros. So, and I think, you mentioned, I think in one of your articles on Sam's Sportsline about, or Sports for Jacks, about putting pressure on, putting the blame on coaching because they're making coaching mistakes. That's happening in so many ways. And
and I think today, I think Gus really needs to have a big time kind of thought process about his own actions and maybe his actions of the special teams coaches. But when you get to a situation in the football game where the game is on the line, you do not send a guy you picked up as an unrestricted free agent back to catch a punt.
Yeah.
Particularly a guy who's shown to be unreliable. I mean, he's got breakaway speed, he might make some magic happen. But what you need there is the ball. I don't care where, but you need the ball.
So put your best hands back there.
And all he ever talks about is how much you can trust Brian Walters.
Yeah.
And when asked after the game, he says, well, inside the 10, it was Walters. Outside the 10, it's Marshall. Well, that's fine, Gus. But look, situational football is what you have talked about a lot particularly in the last 2 weeks, about how you have to adjust in those situations, how the players have to adjust. This was a situation where the coaches had to adjust and they didn't.
I'm not a huge fan of Gus Bradley as a game manager, in terms of when to challenge plays and when not to, when to use timeouts, personnel decisions. Again, I think I think he needs to come a long way in that. The other thing that this happens on a weekend that the Jaguars came in with a chance to compete and maybe make a move in the AFC South, but the Colts win. The Titans win with Mike Mularkey at coach. And, oh, by the way, Blaine Gabbert's San Francisco 49ers won as well. Kind of a rough weekend.
17-16. But, all this talk about the AFC South and it's bad and the Jaguars have a chance and they're a half game out and this and that. How about win a few games first? I mean, you're not going to be in competition for the division if you're 4-12. When you start winning 6, 7, 8 games, now you can talk about, hey, where are we in this picture? But they got to win some games before I ever want to hear talk about division championship or playoff spot or any of that.
The only reason that was even happening is because the whole division was lousy.
Right, and that's fine. But if you're not somebody who's going to win games, then somebody else is going to win those games. It doesn't matter how lousy it is. So, I just think it's hard enough to win in the NFL when the other team's trying to beat you. When you're also beating yourself, it's difficult to overcome those things. 4 turnovers today, didn't get a turnover. Had a couple of chances, didn't get the ball. Ball was on the ground a couple of times, didn't come up with it. I thought both interceptions, of course, the interception at the end of the game, somewhat desperation. But, early in the game, the Jaguars are coming out. They're down 7-3. They're coming out of their own end. And Bortles tries to kind of hawk one in there, and it bounces off the receiver and goes up in the air and gets intercepted. And I'm like, that's not a throw you really should make in that situation. You got to know that if that guy doesn't have a clean chance to catch it, that there's nobody else in the pattern. And your ball's probably going to be intercepted. Throw it away. Eat it. Take a sack. Do something. Bortles is gliding along the line of scrimmage in the fourth quarter. And I mean, you can see the guy coming behind him, and you're like, come on, Blake, get rid of the ball. But instead, he cocks his arm, sack, fumble, recovery, game basically over.
So you've seen these analytic charts of win probability throughout the course of a game. So based on something happening at a certain time,
right,
you get win probability. On your personal win probability chart, how much of what percentage of the game did you think, hey, the Jaguars might win this one? And how much did you think, nah, no?
I probably had 20% of the game where I said, hey, they got a chance to win this game.
Yeah.
Early on, I thought that they played pretty well. And numerous times when they played so well against the run, statistically, the Jets don't win when they don't run the football effectively. But as the turnover started to pile up, then I thought, okay, now there's a problem. But then, the mistakes by Bortles and then by Marshall put them so far behind the 8 ball. I mean, when even after Bortles fumbled and the defense rose up and forced a punt, I thought, all right, the Jaguars, this looks like the Buffalo game. They got a chance to win it right here. Mm-hmm. And Marshall fumbles the ball, and the game's over right there. I mean, the game is over. I mean, the Jets would have had to literally fallen asleep to not win that game at that point.
Yeah, it was, it's the kind of game that against a good team, if you lose that, you say, okay. And the Jets, by the way, are a team that's a meh team with a couple of good areas. They're very good on the defensive front, and they blitz
statistically, right?
Right. And they blitz a lot.
And they blitz a lot. Wait a minute. By the way, they blitz a lot. Is that news?
Right.
I don't think that's news.
No.
I mean, and the delayed blitz, not news either. The Jaguars did not try one either delayed handoff or delayed screen or one thing in any situation, particularly on third down when you knew the other team was going to be bringing the house. You got to do something to keep them a little off balance, and the Jaguars did none of that. So
got to be better.
Hey, can you pause this call?
I can just let it go, and then you can come back and we can pick it up again. I don't think there's a pause button, but
go out and do a little A block hit.
Go do an A block hit, and we'll come back and finish.
I'll be right back. Okay.
It's unbelievable. I always kind of thought I was going to win. I said it's unbelievable. I always kind of thought I was going to win a big one. For some reason, I was the first one. We scored sometimes before, but this is going to take a long time to see.
Historically, this has been a moment for Russell, but this week you went them to death.
God dang it, you asshole.
And you just up your game plan. How did you sort of keep that out here? Don't walk it so far by you. You go.
My iron play this week was incredible. So, I mean, I knew with me in place, I could give myself a first fly. And I didn't matter. If I had 5 iron or long range, I felt comfortable. I was going to give myself a first time. My iron play was the key today.
Being a Scotsman from Inverness, the pride of Scotland, so I had Inverness. How was it losing from someone over there to the PGA Tour right after the European Tour?
I mean, it was kind of a natural thing for me. I mean, my father was from the United States, and a lot of my moms were there. But we spent a lot of time there growing up. So it wasn't that big transition to do it. I love Scotland, and I love playing in the US.
You're the fan.
I said it's unbelievable. I always kind of thought. I said it's unbelievable. I always kind of thought I was going to win a big one. For some reason, this is going to take a long time to see. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. Let me pick it up with this.
All right.
Does the game today, does the loss to the Jets and the way that it happened change your expectation of the story that seemed to magically go away after one victory, which is Gus Bradley's position and how safe it is with this team?
No, because after having met with Shad in London and not only listened to what he said, but how he said it, I really believe that he thinks that Bradley is the right guy, and that this year wins aren't going to be the judgment whether the team is better or not. And you and I even agree that the team is better than they were. But I think that next year is the year that Shad Khan will expect victories. This year, the solid improvement of the team overall, I think, is very evident. And the growth of guys like Hearns and Robinson and Bortles, I mean, I think that's a big thing. Next year, totally different story. But
all about wins next year, which, by the way,
right,
will send some longtime Jaguars fans screaming for the hills. Like, it's always next year. It's all you always have to. Oh, this, it's fine next year. And I'm not saying it's the wrong decision, but I mean, I feel for Jaguars fans who have been through this time after time after time. Well, listen, next year we got it figured out. We know what's wrong next year. Cub fans had, wait till next year. Red Sox fans said wait till next year.
Gator fans had it as their rallying cry all the way up until 1990.
Yeah.
Wait till next.
And by the way, this year was next year for the Gators.
It turned out to be that. So, I mean, you're right. There's a lot of people who are going to worry about that, but the one that counts is Shad Khan, and he's not worried about it. I mean, he's going to spend $30 million or $80 million or whatever he's going to spend of his own money on a whole amphitheater and field house in the south side of the stadium.
Or half of one, right?
It depends on what the city council comes up with. But yeah, I mean, that's, to me, it's, by the way, they fired their manager at Fulham this weekend.
So that's the fourth one.
I think 5 total, 3 in 1 year, right?
Right. So this will be, So fourth firing, it'll be the fifth manager, right?
I think so. Yeah. So it's not anything you can do in the NFL, and he has noted several times the differences between the two leagues and what you do there and how you can do it. But certainly he does not have infinite patience when it comes to winning. And I think he thinks there is a formula to get it done. And I think he agrees with the formula that Caldwell and Bradley have put together. And he also has bought into their timeline.
Yeah. So obviously soccer, especially, the Big Five leagues, which the EPL is one, Champions League would be number 6, but in England has certain expectations, but it is a pretty dramatic difference in practice right now for Shad Khan. Since taking over, he has been so much more patient with what's happened with the Jaguars than he has been with Fulham. It's dramatic.
And some of that has to do with money spent. And remember, you have to look at this at what Khan wants. Obviously, look at it from his businessman's eye. How do you judge what's going on? Well, eventually it's wins and losses, but are you getting closer to the goal? Where are you going? Do you have the long-term vision? Both of them, they're doing renovations at Craven Cottage. They're building that over the next year. A new Riverside stand that's cantilevered over the Thames. Yeah, what is Shad Khan doing? He is using Craven Cottage as a full entertainment center for his European clients. He's using the Jaguars and our stadium as a full entertainment center for his American clients and those who want to come to America. Winning is part of the equation eventually, but not the only. That's not the end all be all of the equation.
I agree. I think, and I don't think winning is ever the end of the equation. It's maybe a piece of getting to that end. So that's the big question. How different are the ends for Fulham versus the Jaguars, because he said before that he wants to pass down the Jaguars to his son at some point. Right?
Well, from a Jaguar standpoint, I think that the worth of the team is never predicated on wins and losses. Or Hugh Culverhouse would have gotten rid of that team early on in his ownership. The NFL, the teams, as long as the NFL is an entity in itself, and some people are questioning that, but the Jaguars will always have a near worth to every other team in the league, except for a few.
I think they're like one of the 4 teams that are valued under $1 billion this year. Is that right?
Yeah, but apparently the latest valuation was over $1 billion. Like you said, they're always going to be up there in terms of just total sports franchises. Fulham, on the other hand, a lot of their worth is predicated on being in the EPL because that's where the television money comes from. And it'd be like saying, okay, the Jaguars are going to, if the Jaguars win 3 games next year, they're going to go to the CFL. But, that's not going to happen. With Fulham, I think they're 13th in the Champions League this year. They're not even among the top tier teams there, ready to ascend and be promoted. So the difference in the valuation of the franchise over there, when Fulham's in the EPL, they're worth about $400 million.
But that's cash flow, right? So, and I don't want to get too deep into the business talk here, but it's cash flow versus end game, right? Exit strategy, whatever that is. And from a cash flow standpoint, that's much more affected by what league you're in. You're right. From Fulham's standpoint, the amount of money that you lose from being relegated to the championship is dramatic. But from an end game, from an exit strategy, I'd really be interested to know right now what is in Shad Khan's mind for the exit strategy for Jaguars versus Fulham.
Well, remember, what's Shad, 64? I don't think he's 65 yet.
Right.
64, his daughter's married. His son's going to get engaged here soon. Whether or not, I guess Tony Khan eventually will have the ownership of the team, I guess.
That's what he's talked about. Yeah.
The previous owner of Fulham, Mohammed Al Fayed, I think sold the team when he was 84 or 85 years old. Mm-hmm. So, another 20 years of active ownership for Shad Khan in both of those entities, I suppose, is what he's anticipating. Right.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a very interesting study to see how those two have been handled differently because of some. And I'm not saying right or wrong. Just they're different sports, but it's the same owner, and it's just interesting to see how that all plays out.
Just remember when you're looking at decisions made by a businessman who owns a sports franchise, the wins and losses are only part of the equation. And that's not unless they're getting embarrassed, but that's not the end all be all. And unless you're the Brown family or the Rooneys or whose all of your money comes from the ownership of that particular franchise, then it's a very different kind of equation when you start talking about management changes,
or unless those wins and losses dramatically impact the revenue that the club can make through sponsorship, ticket sales, that sort of thing. So,
of which Mark Lamping, the president of the club, told us has had no impact whatsoever on corporate interest in the Jaguars. The lack of winning. Now, if he's telling the truth, and you don't know because that's his job to say that, but if that's the case, then it's no big deal. This coming week against Baltimore, the Jaguars were 7.5 point underdog against the Jets, and they covered. But
by the way,
do you expect them to win this week?
No.
Baltimore's not very good, but do you expect the Jaguars to win? No. So if they do win, you'll be surprised. Following week against Tennessee, do you expect the Jaguars to win? Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of. You kind of do. Next week against San Diego, you expect the Jaguars to win at home? No. So anytime the Jaguars win a game, you're going to be surprised until they prove that they can be trusted to build on what they've got and start winning or taking it down to the wire consistently as a franchise that doesn't make those kinds of mistakes. the Jaguars don't make the mistakes that they made today, they win. You can say that against Indy, Tampa Bay, Houston, Carolina, virtually every game except the New England game.
Yep. Yeah. And again, that's an improvement. It's just not good enough. Not a fast enough improvement for what I would have expected and what I think most people expect on a 3-year plan.
All right, last thing. You tell me. Gus Bradley's talking about situational football. Am I crazy to think that that's where the coaches have to say to themselves, "We need the ball here.
Absolutely.
Put Walters in the game."
Absolutely, yeah. If you have anytime you have a punt return situation where you have a hands guy and an explosive guy, and you need the ball, put the hands guy in. I don't care where he is on the field.
You know, this isn't Auburn where you get 25 possessions in a game.
Right.
You know, I mean, every possession is precious, and that one was the one where the Jaguars are going to have a chance to do something and win the game. And you entrust that to a guy you picked up as a undrafted free agent who changed positions, and now he's not only not a quarterback, he's trying to make the team as a cornerback, and he did. And now you got him in returning punts. That makes zero sense.
Would you have put Matt Jones back to return?
Right. It just makes zero sense to me. And
I'm with you.
You know, I don't know.
No, that's why I'm
by the way, there's more and more evidence, I think, that the Jaguars are not a good team, so they don't get the breaks. The refs don't give them the breaks. And things are going to go one way or the other, and it could be one way or the other, and it's a gray area. It's not gone in the it's not going the Jaguars' way.
I'm not going to get into the conspiracy theory on this. They're not good because they're not good. Not enough good players, not enough good coaching. 4 turnovers. Did the officials cause 4 turnovers today?
No.
Right.
No.
So that's and the Jets aren't good enough to have earned the Jordan rules either here, by the way.
No, that's true.
So, all right, that'll do it for the Sam and Colt podcast, brought to you as always by Champion Cycling. 3 locations: Mandarin, the beach, and where's the 3rd location, Sam?
The 3 locations: Arlington, the beach, and the Mandarin. That's right. Stop in and see Phil or Jim or Brian at the beach for seriously. If you got a beach cruiser that you just need a little help with, no problem. If you've got a high-end road bike that you need a tune-up, no problem. All that, they can handle it all.
Sounds good. You can follow Sam on Twitter at Sam Kavaris. Follow me on Twitter at Cole Pepper. And we'll talk to you next week. Trying to make it sound like a different podcast next week, but it needs to look like a different football game, too.
That's exactly right. Which was the title of the article I wrote. Same mistakes, same result.
It's the old definition of insanity. All right, back. Speaking of the definition of insanity, we'll be back next time. Thanks so much for tuning in right here to the Sam and Colt podcast.